Hey, beauty, are you going through a hard season in your life right now? In this episode, I'm going to talk about four people from the Bible who are going through trials. We're going to discuss what they did when they were going through the trial, and we're going to talk about what we can learn from their response. I'm going to tell you four questions you can ask yourself when you are going through a trial that can change your life forever. These questions can definitely change your life even if you're not going through a trial. I'm so excited to get into this episode because just thinking about it was so helpful for me in my own life. So let's get into the show. If you're overwhelmed, tired of trying to figure out your health on your own, and looking for a faith-fueled way forward, you're in the right place. Hey beauty, I'm Alexandra, author and registered nurse, and I believe Jesus is the source of true healing. I am the Lord your healer. Exodus 15:26. Remember how God brought the Israelites out of Egypt? He parted the Red Sea for them. He performed all these miracles. And then they ended up in the wilderness. They ended up in the wilderness for 40 years. I don't know if this is true. I didn't really dig to make sure that this was true, but supposedly they were only supposed to be in the wilderness for 11 days, but they ended up being there for 40 years. They were complaining, they were grumbling, they were not believing in the promises that God had given them, but God still took care of them. Exodus 16, starting in verse 1. They set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the people of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had departed from the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the people of Israel said to them, "Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full, for you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." And the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I am about to rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not." Skipping down to verse 31. Now the house of Israel called its name manna. It was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. First of all, doesn't that sound so tasty? This manna, this wafer made with honey. The Israelites, if you haven't read about the Israelites in the Bible, basically, they kept grumbling, they kept complaining, they kept doubting God, which is what we do sometimes, right? But God was so good to them. He's so good to them over and over and over again. And the fact that he gave the Israelites manna is just one example of the good gifts that God gave to the Israelites, even though they were grumbling and complaining and they didn't have faith. From my understanding, it was their attitude that caused them to wander for 40 years in the wilderness. So my question for you, and all of these questions are for myself as well. Here's the first question that can change your life forever. What is the manna that God has placed in your life? I can ask you this question so confidently because God is so good. And even though we can be so stubborn, so ungrateful, so unfaithful, God still gives us good gifts. It really makes me wonder if the Israelites had stopped grumbling, if they had changed their ways, what would have happened? They probably wouldn't have wandered around the wilderness for 40 years. Okay, let's talk about Hagar. Remember the really tragic story of Hagar? Basically, Sarah or Sarai, God changes her name. I forgot if she's Sarah or Sarai. Sarah tells Abraham to take their, I believe she's Egyptian, to take their Egyptian servant and sleep with her so that they can have a son through her. So Abraham does it. He takes his servant Hagar. He sleeps with Hagar, and Hagar bores Abraham a son. This is all in Genesis 21. But then Sarah gets mad at Hagar and basically tells Abraham to throw Hagar and Ishmael out. So Hagar ends up in the wilderness with Ishmael. Genesis 21, starting in verse 14. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water and the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot, for she said, "Let me not look on the death of the child." And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation." Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. I'm going to read verse 19 again. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So Hagar puts her son away from her because she believes that they're about to die because they've run out of water. They're in the wilderness, they're all alone. But then God hears their cry, and it says that he opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw the well of water. I have heard it said that the well of water was always there, but Hagar just didn't see it. I think it's so beautiful in the story that God basically opened her eyes. He showed her the well of water. So first of all, it shows how, once again, how good God is. He saved Hagar and Ishmael. But when we read this passage, I think that we can, when we're thinking about applying this to our own lives, we can be proactive and we can ask ourselves this question: what is the well of water that you are not seeing in your own life? We get so caught up with the mundane, we get so caught up with being busy, we get just so distracted that unfortunately I believe that God has so many wells of water that He's placed around us, but we just can't see it because we're so distracted or we're so distraught. When I think about Hagar, I feel so bad for Hagar because she's been abused, she's been thrown out. It makes me wonder, what does she think of God? She knows that Abraham and Sarah serve this God, and yet they treat her this way. So, I mean, I can see that it's understandable that someone like Hagar couldn't see what was right in front of her. So when we're thinking about applying this to our own lives, what is it that kind of blinds us to the answers, to the blessings that God has put in our lives? You might be struggling with your health right now, and maybe God has put someone in your life to help you. Maybe He has pointed you to some books that you can read to help you. Maybe He's been telling you for a while that you need to just slow down, or you need to sleep more, or you need to spend time in relationship with other women that care about you. Maybe you need to be inside a community where you can be vulnerable and share the struggles that you're going through. Let's move on to Paul in the New Testament. Paul had such a fire for God, right? He wrote a great amount of the New Testament. He writes about how he was beaten and tortured. He went through I think multiple shipwrecks. He went through so many things. And there was a period of time where he was in prison. I have never been to prison, but if I were to be put in prison, I hope that I wouldn't think this way, but I might think and ask God, God, why am I in prison? I thought that you wanted me to serve you. How can I serve you when I'm in chains, when I'm going through all this hardship? But that's not the way that Paul responded. He actually wrote Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon when he was in prison. We can benefit from the time that Paul was in prison because he chose to serve God even while he was in prison. What if Paul had said, God, this is too hard. I'm in prison. How do you want me to serve you in prison? This is ridiculous. What if he refused to write those letters? What if he just gave up and he didn't want to encourage anyone? He didn't want to teach anyone. I don't think he knew that people like you and me would be reading these letters hundreds of years from when he wrote them. So when we're in situations where we feel like we're in chains, we're going through hardship, maybe you're going through some health issues and you feel like, God, I could serve you so much better if you would just heal me right now. Whatever it is you're going through, instead of feeling like you want to give up or just feeling defeated because you don't understand what's going on, you can ask yourself this question: how can God use this hard season for his glory? Lastly, let's talk about Joseph. Joseph had a dream when he was 17 years old that people would bow down to him. He was already the favorite son of Jacob, and so his brothers basically hated him and hated him even more when he started sharing these dreams. So, note this, he was 17 when he had those dreams that people would bow down to him. But instead of seeing that dream come to fruition, he sold into slavery by his brothers. He is later wrongfully accused and thrown into prison. When I look at this story in Genesis, I don't see any evidence of Joseph complaining or doubting the dream that he had. He is put in charge in Potiphar's household, and then when he's thrown into prison, he's basically kind of put in charge there too. So instead of sulking or complaining like the Israelites did, he chose to live in integrity and serve God. This is so inspiring. So when he was in prison, once again, he could have just been mad. He could have complained. He could have said, God, what the heck? Why am I in prison? What am I going to do for you when I'm in prison? You gave me a dream and then I was sold into slavery and I was faithful to you. I could have slept with Potiphar's wife and I didn't. I ran away and now I'm in prison. But he didn't do that. He continued to serve God. Joseph had a gift of interpreting dreams. This is from Genesis chapter 40, starting in verse 5. And one night they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, each his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his master's house, Why are your faces downcast today? They said to him, We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them. And Joseph said to them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me. So look at this. Joseph is in prison. Instead of sulking, instead of keeping to himself, he is proactive about encouraging the other prisoners. He asks them, Why are your faces downcast today? And then they told Joseph what was wrong, and he offers to help them. So Joseph interprets the dreams for the baker and the cupbearer, and he asks the cupbearer to basically put in a good word with Pharaoh so he can get out of prison. Well, the cupbearer forgets about him for 2 years. But then the cupbearer remembers Joseph in prison. Pharaoh takes Joseph out of prison because he wants Joseph to interpret his dream. And then at the age of 30, Joseph is basically made Pharaoh's second in command. So he had the dream when he was 17. All this really bad stuff happened. And then finally, at the age of 30, he becomes one of the most powerful rulers in Egypt, and people are bowing down to him. But I want to go back to the prison. Like I already said, when Joseph was in prison, he wasn't sulking around, he wasn't complaining, he wasn't doubting God. He was actually being proactive about encouraging the other prisoners. What if he had never asked the cupbearer and the baker what was wrong? Or what if the cupbearer and the baker asked him for help, but he refused to help them interpret their dreams because he was bitter? If he wasn't a man that wanted to serve God, maybe he wouldn't have gotten out of prison at all. The reason why Joseph got out of prison was because he chose to encourage and help the cupbearer. So, my question to you is, who is the cupbearer in your life? God puts certain people into our lives, people that need our encouragement, people that need our wisdom, people that need our support. And it's possible that if we are serving God, if we serve the people around us well, that service is what can lead to our breakthrough. It can lead to, it led to Joseph's freedom. It led to the fulfillment of Joseph's dream. So, Beauty, who is the cupbearer in your life? Who are you called to serve? Who are you called to encourage? Who are you called to support? As you reflect on how these people in scripture responded to hardship, you might be noticing some areas in your own life where you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or unsure what the next faithful step is, especially when it comes to your health and well being. If you'd like help slowing things down and discerning your next steps with wisdom and peace, I offer one-time health clarity sessions. They're faith-fueled conversations focused on discernment, not diagnosis or protocols. You can learn more or book at herholistichealing.com/clarity. Thanks for listening today. If you like what you heard, would you take a minute to leave the show a review? I would love to connect with you at herholistichealing.substack.com. Matthew 11. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls.
For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Do, 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 Bye. Bye.
This content is for informational purposes only and is not meant to be medical advice.